No one inside Judge Judy's courtroom that morning had any idea they were seconds away from witnessing one of the most shocking sentences ever spoken on national television. The cameras were rolling. The audience was settled. The bailiff stood stone-faced at his post. Everything looked normal, until she walked in. Aurora Kensington. The only daughter of tech billionaire Victor Kensington, owner of 7 companies, a private island, 3 political lobbyists, and a reputation for buying the outcomes he wanted. Aurora didn't walk into the courtroom. She floated in, like the world was a stage built for her amusement. Her designer heels clicked against the floor with a rhythm that screamed privilege. She wore a $12,000 dress, Cartier bracelets, and a smile so smug it instantly tightened the air around her. She didn't glance at the audience, or the cameras, or even her opponent. Her gaze went straight to Judge Judy, and she smirked. A smirk that said, "I run people like you." But what the audience didn't know was that Aurora had already made the single biggest mistake of her life, long before the cameras started rolling. Because Judge Judy had reviewed the case file earlier that morning. She had seen the complaint, the counterclaim, the evidence, and the statement Aurora had given pre-hearing. And one particular sentence, printed in cold black ink, had nearly made Judy push her chair back and stand up. It was a sentence dripping with entitlement and contempt. A sentence that revealed exactly who Aurora was behind the Instagram-perfect facade. And in less than 20 minutes, that arrogance would dismantle her entire life. Aurora took her seat as if it offended her. She sat with the posture of a queen forced to mingle with peasants, brushing a strand of hair back with unnecessary flair. Across from her sat Mia Reyes, a 27-year-old bakery owner with trembling hands and a folder full of receipts. She looked exhausted. Humiliated. Like someone who had survived something she still wasn't fully ready to talk about. Judge Judy entered, and the courtroom rose. Everyone except Aurora. She stayed seated for an extra 3 seconds, long enough for the cameras to catch it, long enough for Judy to notice, long enough to send a silent message, "I don't stand for anyone." That was the first crack. Judy narrowed her eyes slightly, not enough for a casual viewer to notice, but unmistakable to anyone who had watched her for years. That look meant danger. That look meant patience was already gone. That look meant a verbal storm was brewing with the force of a Category 5 hurricane. "Ms. Kensington," Judy began, her tone deceptively calm. "You're being sued for damages totaling $36,400. Ms. Reyes claims you destroyed her business, caused months of harassment, and used your father's influence to intimidate her. How do you respond?" Aurora laughed. Actually laughed. A soft, condescending laugh that sent a ripple of shock through the courtroom. She folded her arms, leaned back, and said with chilling confidence, "Honestly, Judge, this is beneath me. I don't even know why we're entertaining any of this. I could buy her bakery tomorrow with the money in my purse." A murmur swept through the audience. Mia's eyes dropped. Judy didn't flinch. It was the kind of calm that comes right before an explosion. "Ms. Kensington," Judy said slowly, "I asked you a question. I expect an answer." Aurora shrugged, completely unfazed. "Fine," she said, "I'll explain it simply. She ruined my event. She embarrassed my family. And I am not responsible for other people being financially fragile. That's not my problem." Judy's pen froze mid-note. Fragile. The word hung in the air like poison. "Ms. Reyes," Judy continued, turning her attention to the plaintiff, "tell me what happened at this charity event." Before Mia could speak, Aurora raised her hand like she was in a classroom. Judy stared at her, stunned that she even dared. "Yes?" Judy asked dryly. Aurora flipped her hair with theatrical annoyance. "I can explain it better. She's emotional. That was her second mistake." Mia's voice shook as she recounted the humiliation, the threats, the viral clip Aurora's friends posted, the loss of clients, the vandalism that followed when the story got twisted by Aurora's social media army, and how her bakery nearly collapsed under the weight of the financial damage. Judge Judy listened intently. Aurora scrolled on her phone. The audience watched her with growing disgust. And then came the moment, the one that would freeze the courtroom, stop Judy mid-breath, and turn this case into the most talked-about video on the internet. Judy leaned back, folded her hands, and prepared to question Aurora again. But Aurora beat her to it. Rolling her eyes, she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Why am I even explaining myself? I own people like her. I own this whole room if I want. I own." She pointed directly at Judge Judy. "You." A crack of silence ripped through the courtroom. Someone in the audience gasped. Mia covered her mouth. The bailiff's jaw tightened. And Judge Judy, slowly, very slowly, set her pen down. The temperature in the room seemed to drop by 15 degrees. Judy's next words were soft, cold, and lethal. "Ms. Kensington, you just signed your own verdict. And the destruction hadn't even started yet." If the audience thought the billionaire's daughter, Sloane Harrington, had already shown the full extent of her entitlement in Section 1, they were wrong. What happened next would expose a level of arrogance so breathtaking, so shameless, that even the courtroom cameras seemed to lean in tighter, as if they knew history was about to be made. Sloane didn't enter that courtroom to defend herself. She entered to dominate it. At least, that's what she believed. When Judge Judy asked her a simple question, one any respectful litigant would answer directly, Sloane responded with a smirk that could curdle milk. She looked at Judy like she was looking at a maid who forgot to fluff her pillows at a five-star hotel. The kind of look that said, "You work for people like me." And that expression alone told everyone in the room exactly who she was, the kind of rich kid who had never heard the word no, never faced consequences, and never believed authority applied to her. "Miss Harrington," Judy repeated, keeping her voice calm, "I asked what happened at the charity gala. Start with the facts." Sloane's laugh was soft, dismissive, almost musical in its disrespect. "Judge," she replied, crossing her legs like she was at brunch, "I don't really do facts. My father handles that stuff with our legal team." She waved her hand as if brushing away an annoying fly. "I'm only here because our lawyers said it'd be good optics. Honestly, this whole thing is so beneath me." The courtroom stiffened. Even the bailiff, who had the patience of a monk and the posture of a soldier, raised one eyebrow. Judy's eyes narrowed, not enough to be dramatic, but just enough for viewers to know a storm was forming behind them. If Sloane noticed that subtle shift, she didn't care. She pulled out her phone, in Judge Judy's courtroom, and began scrolling casually, like this was a waiting room at the spa. "Put the phone down," Judy said, her voice ice-cold. Sloane didn't even look up. "1 second. Daddy's texting me." That moment, those 3 words, was when everyone in the courtroom silently concluded the same thing: this girl was about to get destroyed. Sloane finally lifted her gaze and smiled sweetly, condescendingly, at Judge Judy. "Sorry, but when your father runs the most profitable tech conglomerate in the country, you don't ignore his messages. We're not regular people." Her tone dripped privilege, oozed entitlement. "I shouldn't even be here. Daddy already said he'd take care of it." Judy leaned forward just a fraction, her eyes steady, unblinking. "This is my courtroom, Miss Harrington. Not your father's office." Sloane shrugged. "Same thing, right? Power is power." A gasp rippled through the audience. Elena Dawson, the plaintiff, the woman Sloane had humiliated publicly at the gala, shook her head in disbelief. Sloane saw her reaction, smiled wider, and twisted the knife. "Oh please," she sneered, "this woman is being dramatic. I barely touched her. I don't know why she's trying to be famous off my name, but she should be thanking me. I boosted her PR." Elena's eyes filled with anger she had been holding back for months. But Sloane wasn't finished. She leaned back in her chair, tilted her chin up, and said the sentence that would go viral in less than 20 minutes. "Look, I'm a Harrington. People like us don't lose. We own half the city. And honestly, Judge," she gestured vaguely toward Judy with the laziness of someone swatting a mosquito, "I own you too." Dead. Silence. Not a breath. Not a cough. Not the rustle of a single paper. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. The audience froze like mannequins. Even the cameras seemed to zoom in by instinct. And Judge Judy just stared. Not shocked. Not offended. Just still. The kind of stillness that meant someone had just crossed a line she didn't even know existed until now. Sloane, oblivious to the danger she was in, continued talking. Every word digging her deeper, burying her faster. "Let's be real," she said, gesturing grandly, "your entire career is TV ratings. And my family practically funds the network you're on. So, maybe, you could show me a little respect instead of acting like we're equals." Judy didn't respond. She didn't blink. She didn't move. She simply pressed her palms together lightly, like a surgeon preparing for a delicate but inevitable operation. And that was when the audience collectively realized, this wasn't going to end with a scolding. This wasn't going to end with a lecture. This was going to be the kind of judicial destruction people would watch for years. "Miss Harrington," Judy finally said, her voice calm enough to terrify the bravest human being alive, "are you finished?" Sloane tossed her hair and smirked. "Not really. But go on." A low whistle came from the gallery. Someone whispered, "She's done." Another murmured, "This is the stupidest person alive." Elena's hands were trembling, not from fear, but anticipation. She knew what was coming. Everyone knew what was coming. But Sloane didn't. She had no idea she had just transformed what could have been a routine lawsuit into a televised execution of privilege, entitlement, and generational arrogance. She had no idea Judge Judy had already read the full investigative report. She had no idea Judy knew every cruel thing she had said, every threat she had made, every lie she had told. She had no idea the woman she just insulted wasn't just a judge, she was a force of nature. And Judy was already preparing to unleash it. The moment Judge Judy turned her gaze toward Aurora Sterling, the billionaire's daughter who had just declared, "I own you," the temperature in the courtroom seemed to drop. Not a single person moved. Not the bailiff. Not the camera operators. Not even Aurora's attorney, who looked like he wanted to melt into the floor and disappear entirely. Because everyone knew one thing, Judge Judy had officially shifted from annoyed to prepared to destroy, and there was no coming back from that. Judy folded her hands slowly, deliberately, the way she always did when she was about to dismantle someone with surgical precision. But Aurora didn't see it. She was too busy smirking, too busy whispering to her attorney, too busy reveling in the supposed power that came from having a billionaire father and a last name that made corporate boards tremble. In Aurora's mind, this courtroom wasn't a place of justice, it was just another room full of people who should obey her. She genuinely believed the rules didn't apply to her, that Judge Judy was just another older woman with a camera crew, and that she, Aurora Sterling, was untouchable. That delusion was about to shatter. "Miss Sterling," Judge Judy said calmly, "you seem very confident in your influence. So let's begin with something simple." Aurora leaned back, crossing her arms like a teenager being scolded. "Finally," she said under her breath, "we can get this over with." Judy ignored the comment. "Tell me," she continued, "why you believe Ms. Ramirez should owe you $50,000. Aurora flipped her hair. "Because she ruined my event," she said, as though explaining something to a toddler. "And because she needs to learn that when you disrespect a family like mine, there are consequences." "And what exactly," Judy asked, her tone as gentle as a warning siren, "did she do?" "She embarrassed me," Aurora snapped. "She wouldn't let me inside my own benefit gala because I was 5 minutes late. She yelled at me in front of people. She grabbed my wrist. She. Stop, Judge Judy cut in sharply. She grabbed your wrist? Aurora nodded dramatically. Yes. And I bruised. That was when Judy picked up the folder the audience hadn't seen yet, the one she had been quietly reviewing for an hour before the cameras rolled. She flipped it open with the kind of calm that made the entire room hold its breath. Miss Sterling, Judy said, according to the security footage, Ms. Ramirez did not touch you. In fact, she lifted a printed still frame of the video. You were the one who grabbed her. Aurora froze. It was only for half a second, but it was enough. Enough for everyone to see that flicker of panic, that tiny spark of fear behind her practiced arrogance. And Judge Judy saw it too. I grabbed her because she was being disrespectful, Aurora insisted. She kept lecturing me about rules. I don't follow rules. I make rules. The audience exchanged looks. Even Judy raised an eyebrow. You don't follow rules, she repeated quietly. Is that what you just said? It's true, Aurora said proudly. My father. That was the moment Judge Judy snapped the folder shut. No, she said sharply, we are not talking about your father. We are talking about you. Aurora blinked, but Judy continued before she could speak. You, Miss Sterling, are an adult. Not a toddler. Not a mascot for your father's money. And certainly not the owner of this courtroom. Aurora scoffed. Please. Do you know how many judges my father has? Stop talking, Judy said, so abruptly that Aurora's jaw snapped shut mid-sentence. Silence thundered through the room. Judy leaned forward. Miss Sterling, let me explain something that nobody in your life apparently has the courage to tell you. Aurora's confidence wavered. You have mistaken financial privilege for personal value, Judy continued. You think wealth makes you superior. You think entitlement makes you powerful. But let me tell you something with absolute clarity, power without discipline is a disaster waiting to happen. Aurora's face reddened. You don't know anything about me. Oh, I know enough, Judy said. For example, I know you filed this lawsuit for $50,000 claiming emotional distress. I also know you posted on social media, the same night, laughing about how you were going to humiliate the security girl on TV and make her regret touching a Sterling. Aurora froze again. Her attorney closed his eyes. And I also know, Judy continued, flipping open another document, that you contacted 3 news outlets the next day claiming to have been physically assaulted, despite every piece of footage showing the opposite. The courtroom exploded with whispered shock. Aurora's entire expression collapsed into panic. That's not fair, she stammered. You're twisting everything. No, Judy interrupted sharply, I'm revealing everything. There's a difference. Aurora opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She wasn't used to being challenged. She wasn't used to being exposed. And she certainly wasn't used to losing control. Judy leaned back. We're not done. Aurora looked sick. What you did to Ms. Ramirez was not only vindictive, it was dangerous. You tried to use your father's money and influence to destroy a hard-working woman who was doing her job. And now you will face the consequences of your actions. Not your father. You. The room was stone silent. Aurora Sterling, who had walked into the courtroom radiating wealth and arrogance, suddenly looked very small. And Judge Judy wasn't finished with her yet. The moment Avery Sinclair finished her last sentence, people like you should be grateful my family keeps you relevant, a soundless shockwave rolled through the entire courtroom. Even the producers, who had seen some of the ugliest entitlement in television history, instinctively froze. This wasn't just disrespect. This wasn't attitude. This wasn't arrogance. This was a billionaire's daughter looking directly at Judge Judy and telling her she was nothing. And when you say something like that to a woman who built her entire legacy on crushing liars, exposing frauds, and humbling the arrogant, the results are not just predictable, they are catastrophic. Judge Judy didn't raise her voice. She didn't slam the bench. She didn't even blink. Instead, she slowly removed her glasses, folded them neatly, and placed them on the desk with the precision of someone preparing for an execution. "Miss Sinclair," she said quietly, "stand up." The audience inhaled sharply. Avery stood, her diamond bracelet catching the light, her chin lifted like she was posing for magazine cameras rather than facing consequences. She still didn't understand what she had done. She still thought she was in control. She still thought her last name could shield her from everything. "Did you," Judy said slowly, "just tell me, that you own me?" Avery flipped her hair. "Well, I mean, metaphorically. My dad basically owns half the state. So yeah. I kind of do." The gallery recoiled. Even her own attorney covered his mouth to hide the look of pure horror. Judge Judy leaned forward, gaze sharp enough to cut through titanium. "Let me explain something to you that your parents clearly failed to teach." Avery smirked, that smirk. The smirk that had gotten her out of consequences her entire life. The smirk that had bought teachers, intimidated managers, silenced waiters, and manipulated security guards. The smirk of someone who believed accountability was a myth. That smirk was about to die. "When you walk into this courtroom," Judge Judy continued, voice rising like a storm, "your father's money means nothing. Your last name means nothing. Your entitlement means nothing. You are nothing but a litigant. And right now, a deeply disrespectful one." Avery scoffed. "Please. Spare me the lecture. You can't actually do anything." Judge Judy's smile was slow, dangerous, and absolutely lethal. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, "watch me." She opened the folder in front of her with terrifying calm. "Shall we talk about the footage of you keying Miss Rodriguez's car? Or the screenshots of the messages you sent her? Or the little stunt you pulled in the parking lot when you threatened to ruin her life if she pressed charges?" Avery's smirk slipped for the first time. "Those are private," she snapped. "They became public," Judy shot back, "the moment you decided to behave like a criminal." A ripple of gasps rolled through the courtroom. Avery's lips trembled before she forced them back into a smile. "Okay, but even if I did, hypothetically, it's just a car. I can buy her another one." Judy slammed her hand onto the bench so sharply the entire room jumped. "This," she thundered, "isn't about money." The room shook. Avery stumbled back a step, eyes widening. "This is about responsibility. This is about consequences. This is about the fact that you used your father's wealth as a weapon to intimidate a young woman who did absolutely nothing to you except exist in a world where you couldn't control her." Avery's voice cracked. "She disrespected me." "No," Judy fired back. "She refused to be walked on. And that, Miss Sinclair, is not disrespect. That is courage." Avery's face flushed bright red. "You're biased. You're only siding with her because she's poor." "Enough." Judy snapped, the entire courtroom trembling under her authority. "You do not get to hide behind wealth when you have spent your entire life abusing it." Avery blinked rapidly, her composure slipping. You could see the panic beginning to creep up her throat like rising water. Then Judy turned to Elena Rodriguez, the plaintiff, calm, quiet, still shaking from everything she endured. "Miss Rodriguez," Judy said softly, "present the footage." Elena reached into her folder with trembling hands and placed a USB drive on the bailiff's desk. The moment the screen behind the bench lit up, Avery's world began to collapse. There she was, Avery, in crystal clear video, keying Elena's car, laughing, calling her trash, threatening to destroy her life, and bragging that daddy's lawyers will bury you. The courtroom fell completely silent. Avery's face went ghost white. "No. No. That's edited. That's..." Judy cut her off. "Miss Sinclair, this footage came directly from your luxury condo security system. Your own building authenticated it. Avery swayed in place. Her confidence was drained. Her voice small, almost childlike. This isn't fair. Fair? Judy repeated. You terrorized this young woman for months. You threatened her job. You vandalized her property. You weaponized your father's influence. And then you had the audacity to walk into my courtroom and declare that you owned me. Her voice dropped into deadly softness. Miss Sinclair, your 47 seconds of arrogance were the most expensive of your life. And we haven't even reached the ruling. Avery's hand flew to her mouth. Tears, real ones now, gathered at the corners of her eyes. The courtroom sat in stunned silence, waiting for the final blow they could feel coming. And Judge Judy was just getting warmed up. The courtroom had fallen so silent that even the camera crew stopped breathing. Billionaire heiress Aurora Sterling, who had walked in with a smile carved from entitlement and a voice sharpened by a lifetime of getting away with everything, now sat trembling, her hands shaking against the polished wooden table. Her earlier arrogance had evaporated like smoke in a hurricane. Every eye in that courtroom was locked on her, waiting to see how she would survive a storm she never imagined she could face. Judge Judy didn't speak at first. She simply stared at Aurora with a measured calm that was more terrifying than anger. The kind of calm that precedes a final verdict so powerful it becomes legend. Aurora shifted in her seat, the confidence she once flaunted shrinking into a knot of visible fear. She tried to hide it, straightening her designer blazer, swallowing hard, pretending she still had control, but the truth was written all over her face. She had lost. And she knew it. The plaintiff, Mia Castillo, sat across the aisle, clutching the folder of documents, the hospital records, repair bills, screenshots, and security footage, that had exposed everything Aurora had done. Not just the damage to Mia's car. Not just the harassment. Not just the threats. But the entire pattern of cruelty and entitlement Aurora had directed at her because Aurora couldn't handle the idea of being held accountable by someone she believed was beneath her. Judge Judy finally spoke. Miss Sterling, she said quietly. Stand up. Aurora rose, legs unsteady, her breath catching in her throat as if the room had suddenly run out of oxygen. Judy looked at her the way only a judge with decades of experience could, like she was staring straight through every lie, every manipulation, every ounce of entitlement Aurora had built her identity around. You told me, Judy continued, in front of this courtroom, in front of millions watching at home, that you owned me. That because your father has money, power, and influence, you are entitled to disrespect, to intimidate, and to harm anyone who refuses to kneel to your last name. Aurora's lips parted, desperate to speak, but Judy raised a hand. No. You will listen. Aurora froze. Judy took a breath, her voice gaining strength with every word. You may come from a wealthy family. You may have grown up in a house where consequences were optional and accountability did not exist. But let me make something abundantly clear, you do not own me. You do not own this courtroom. And you do not own the law. And today, you are about to learn what happens when privilege meets justice. A ripple moved across the room, shock, anticipation, and awe blending into a single electric tension. Judge Judy turned to Mia. Miss Castillo, your evidence was thorough, credible, and overwhelmingly supported. You showed restraint when anyone else would have broken. You demonstrated integrity when you were mocked, threatened, and humiliated. And you stood up to someone who believed she could crush you simply because she wanted to. Judy faced Aurora again, her voice like steel. Miss Sterling, you intentionally damaged Miss Castillo's vehicle. You harassed her. You posted defamatory statements online. You encouraged others to do the same. You caused her emotional distress, financial loss, and public humiliation. Aurora's eyes filled with tears, but she dared not interrupt again. For your actions, Judy said, I am awarding Miss Castillo the full amount requested, $11,800 for damages, $4,200 for legal expenses, $7,000 for lost wages, and an additional $25,000 in punitive damages for malicious misconduct. Gasps echoed through the room. But Judy wasn't done. And let me be very clear, this is the maximum this court is allowed to grant. If I could give more, I would. Aurora's chin crumpled. Her father leaned forward in the audience, but Judy turned her gaze toward him. And before you speak, Mr. Sterling, sit down. Your money does not erase your daughter's behavior. In fact, it may be the reason she believed she could act this way in the first place. The billionaire actually sat. The entire courtroom felt the shift, the moment the untouchable became touchable. Judge Judy addressed Aurora again. But there is one more matter to address. Your online threats, your incitement of harassment, and your documented attempt to intimidate this court will not go unnoticed. The room froze. I am forwarding this case to the district attorney's office for review. Whether additional charges are filed is up to them, not you, not your father, and certainly not your checkbook. Aurora collapsed into her chair, burying her face in her shaking hands. Mia exhaled, a quiet, trembling breath that carried months of fear, humiliation, and exhaustion. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply closed her eyes, letting the weight of the moment settle into her bones. Justice. Real, undeniable justice. Judge Judy leaned forward, delivering a final line that would go viral across every platform within hours. You told me you own me. No, Miss Sterling. Today, the law owns you. The courtroom erupted, not in applause at first, but in stunned silence. A silence charged with something powerful, something rare. Then, slowly, people began to clap. Not for drama. Not for entertainment. But for accountability. Aurora sat motionless. Her world, built on wealth and invincibility, had cracked open in front of millions. Mia wiped a tear. And Judge Judy simply said, "We're done here. Next case."